Hi, and welcome back to Lead, Learn, Thrive. I'm Pia, and I'm really glad that you're here. This podcast is a space for real conversations about work, leadership, learning, and how we can all find ways to thrive. Whether you're listening on your jog, your drive to work, or if I'm with you whilst you cook, I want this to feel like a chat, one that leaves you with something to think about, or maybe even something to try. So with that, let's dive in. All right, so today we're exploring a question that goes far beyond borders. Why do so few women become business leaders? And what can countries like Japan, the UK, and Malta learn from each other? This episode was inspired by a BBC article about Japan's first female Prime Minister, Sanae Takeichi. A historic moment that has sparked a much bigger conversation about leadership, opportunity, and representation. Japan is one of the most advanced economies in the world, and yet it sits near the bottom of the global gender equality rankings. So the question is, can Japan shift? And what can we learn by comparing Japan's situation with the UK and Malta? So let's dig in. Japan, progress, pressure, and persistent barriers. So Japan has just elected its first female prime minister. I mean, this is symbolic, it's historic, and in my opinion, it is overdue. But symbolism alone doesn't transform a system. Japan ranks 118th out of 148 on the Global Gender Gap Index, the worst amongst OECD nations. So let's look at why. What's improving? Okay, we've got female labour market participation has risen for 15 plus years. Brilliant. At 77%, Japanese women's participation now exceeds the US average. Nursery waitlists are shrinking, meaning mothers can return to work quicker. New initiatives support female founders and diverse leadership. Yumiko Murakami, who co-founded Japan's first female-led venture capital firm, highlights this shift. So women are entering the workforce, and many are highly skilled and highly capable. But here's the challenge, the lows. Women earn 70 to 80% of male wages. Only 11% of leadership roles in businesses are held by women. Venture capital is still overwhelmingly male and deeply clubby. Women founders struggle for funding and face higher rates of harassment. Only 20% of Tokyo University undergraduates are women. STEM participation is one of the lowest in the OECD. So this paints a picture of a country that has opened the front door for women, but not the corridors leading to leadership. So let's have a look at the UK, which is better on paper, but still struggling in practice. So the UK often positions itself as progressive, and in many ways it kind of is. The highs, okay, so it has strong equality legislation. I mean, that is a must. Gender pay gap reporting for large companies is also a must. More women are in senior roles than compared to Japan, for example, and greater flexibility and awareness around work-life balance is being promoted. Now, this is where the lows come in. There are still persistent pay gaps. There's a higher proportion of women in part-time roles, and there is underrepresentation in STEM. Cultural assumptions about caregiving still land on women, and leadership pipelines still favour men. So the UK talks more openly about gender equality, but conversations haven't always converted into leadership parity. And then Malta. So it's a small country with big opportunity, but there are also big gaps. Malta is interesting because of its size. So in a much smaller country, culture shifts faster, but culture also holds tighter. So if we look at the highs, so high educational attainment among women, it's a wonderful thing. There's rising female workforce participation, and the EU influence is pushing equality and non-discrimination. There is a growing interest in leadership development, coaching, and workplace culture, which is fabulous to see. But this is where the lows come in. There are still traditional family structures that are so strong, and leadership roles are still disproportionately male. So many sectors, such as construction, politics, and STEM, remain male-dominated. There is limited flexible working, although it is improving, I will really hasten to say. And there is deep societal expectations about gender roles. So realistically, I think Malta sits somewhere between the UK and Japan. It's not as linear or structured as the UK, but it's not as culturally rigid as Japan, but more influenced by both tradition and rapid modernization. So let's have a think. Comparative insights. So what these countries teach us. Okay, so we've got representation requires role models. So Japan struggles because women rarely see women in leadership. The UK certainly has more visibility, but not enough critical mass. Malta is improving, but still feels small, meaning role models are more visible, but fewer. When girls don't see women leading, they don't imagine themselves leading. Education shapes expectations. Now, I think I mentioned this in my previous podcast. But in Japan, girls are actively discouraged from STEM. In Malta, young women do well academically, but many still choose safer, traditional feminine career paths. In the UK, education is more balanced, but stereotypes persist in subtle ways. And then we've got workplace culture, either lifts or limits women. So there are amazingly long hours in Japan. I mean, the working hours that you have, you know, they're up really early, they work really late. It's just crazy. They work extremely hard and very long hours. In the UK, we've got long career interruptions. And in Malta, there's limited flexibility. So the barriers that disproportionately affect women, ultimately. Now, policy helps, but only if culture changes too. Japan increased participation for females, that's brilliant. The UK introduced reporting, and Malta follows EU directives. But culture is slower. Culture is stickier. And culture is what people learn, not what paper mandates. So this is where businesses step in. Okay, so what do businesses need to do? So this is from the Carnegie Coaching and Consulting perspective. So at Carnegie Coaching and Consulting, we always say, policies create structure, culture creates behavior, and leadership creates change. Here is what organizations in Japan, UK, and Malta, or actually really anywhere, must do if they want to retain and elevate female talent. They need to build flexible, modern work cultures. Flexibility, hybrid options, smarter scheduling, supportive structures. Women stay where they can thrive. Create safe workspaces. Harassment, exclusion, and clubby male networks must be confronted and not ignored. Psychological safety is a leadership responsibility. Develop female talent early. So offer coaching, mentoring, interpersonal sponsorship, and strategic career pathways. Reform leadership pipelines. Okay, so promotions shouldn't reward hours spent at a desk, or whether you gave up your weekends, or, you know, whether you decided to go out on the after party with the workplace. They should reward value, innovation, empathy, resilience, and collaboration. Businesses must support female founders and entrepreneurs. So capital access matters, networks matters, and safety matters. A female-led business ecosystem benefits everyone. And I think the final thing that I can suggest really is deploy visible role models. Use your women leaders at all levels as ambassadors, mentors, interviewers, trainers, and storytellers. Representation lifts confidence, and confidence lifts careers, and careers lift leadership. So, here's a personal question for you. Okay, if you're listening right now, which country's situation feels more familiar to your workplace? Is it Japan, the UK, or Malta? And what one action could your organisation take tomorrow to make leadership more accessible to women? Just one action, not 10, not a program, not a strategy document, just one real, concrete, measurable step. Have a think about it. So, on that note, I'd like to thank you so much for joining me today. These conversations matter, not just for women, but for workplaces, communities, and countries striving to evolve. If you've got thoughts, reflections, or stories you'd like to share, I'd really love to hear from you. Send me a message, share the episode, or suggest a future topic. Because the more we talk about this, the more we lead, learn, and thrive. The closer we get to workplaces where everyone can succeed. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep thriving.